I wonder what is the safest place in the house. I know for sure that bathroom is not the safest of all the places in the house, and I can tell you that it's not just that it's the slipperiest place, but there is so much more in the bathroom that can damage you. While I am telling you this story, I am already dead. And let me tell you firsthand, I died in a freak accident in the bathroom. I was 40 when this happened, so I wasn't very old if you think of things that happened. I was a lawyer. I was working with the best of the best, and I had a nice condo, a great car, and a lifestyle that people would dream of. I had the finest of everything. It was pretty great. I mean, rest of my friends who were the same age as me were busy looking after their family and working their ass off for their family. I wasn't the one to support the life of a family man, so I was one of those guys who enjoyed solace a lot, so I stayed private. My friends loved it when they came in my house. It was something that they enjoyed a lot, and they would make it a weekend trip and would stay here and enjoy things and the usual cocktails of drugs that I would stash in my house. It was a great life indeed, and moreover, it was the great moments for my friends. The day it happened, it was one of those days my friends were over at my place, and one of my friends was recently divorced, so we were trying our best to get him over the divorce, and one of the best things was something that our boss at the firm would do. He brought him girls, and he was having a fun time. Those girls were pretty, and they were definitely able to put a smile on my friend's face and all the other friends that were escaping their family and wives for the weekend. They enjoyed their weekend here, and there was always trouble that followed the very weekend, mostly because of them. Almost every wife of my friends hated my guts, mostly because of my lifestyle. Most of them resented their life because of me. I was free and away from any form of responsibility. So every time we had these parties, one of my friends would definitely have a bad breakdown with one of their wives. But what happened the following day changed everything for them and probably made them happier. It was the usual late night and Friday, and my friends were at my place and they were getting drunk, and I called in some escorts, and there were enough drugs for everyone. We were taking the blow up our nose and then going for the vodka shots. My friends were indulging themselves and keeping busy with the girls, and then we decided to go out for the swim. We were having a fun night, and I got a call, and it was my boss, and he said that we got to have an urgent meeting in the morning. There was a client that we had to back. There was so much that was on the line that the boss told me the name of the fan. I was shocked. It was all confidential, so I had to stay quiet. This was an opportunity of a lifetime, and the opportunity to get once again filthy rich. So I had to cut the party short. I had some files coming in and I had to read them and make a case as soon as possible. So I did what I was supposed to do and cut the party out. But as soon as I went to cut the party, one of my friends rebelled and said, "You cannot cut the party short, man. Derek needs this. I need this. We all need this." And I said, "Go back to your wives." Derek looked at me and said, "I don't have a wife." And one of my different friends looked at me and said, "We don't have a wife today either." And they all burst into laughter. And as soon as I could think of how the case, now I knew there was no way that I could get them all out. So I took my laptop and everything pertaining my work to the bathroom. I took the blow one last whiff of cocaine and headed towards the bathroom with a bottle of beers in my hand. I sat in the bathtub to soak it in for a while, and then decided to open the files that were sent to me. And I was sitting in the bathtub with my laptop and started reading the files and making a case. As I was typing, I must not have recognized the battery signal, and when I checked it out, it was low, and I was reaching out when it must have short-circuited and there was a spark. I must have felt that current, and then I dropped in cold in the tub, and I was unconscious, and I drowned. I was out for 7 minutes face deep in the bathtub. I got up and wondered how I was able to not drown, and then I woke up to get dressed, put the robe on. I could still feel the body hurting. And then I was getting out, my leg slipped, and I hit my head on the edge of the bathtub, and I was bleeding. My head was burst open, and I was bleeding profusely. I was trying to get to the door to get help, but by the time I would reach the door, I was already dead. I could see myself lying on the bathroom door. I didn't realize at first that I was dead, but then when I went out, I saw one of my friends open the door to the bathroom, and then I shouted at him to help me, but he couldn't hear me. I was already dead. And then I realized they all ran away, and I was dead empty lying there, and no one was there to attend me. I was looking at myself, a sad 40-year-old man, dead. They didn't get there until a week, and as a ghost, I saw it all. Hey guys, thanks so much for all the support. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, please feel free to do so. I'm currently typing this out at my workplace, which is in the garden area of a home improvement store. I don't work the cash registers, and my manager doesn't even let me water the flowers, so a lot of the time I actually have nothing to do. This results in me taking extremely long bathroom breaks where I just scroll through my phone. I know it sounds bad, but it's better than standing around trying to look busy. Today was no different. Nothing of interest was going on, and this is until my work phone buzzed at the same time as whoever was in the store next to me. This is important for later. After a few seconds, I saw that the guy in the next door had his hands stretched to the ground with his palm facing up. At first, I thought he'd run out of toilet paper and was asking for some more, but he just stayed silent. So I ignored him after that, but then he started moving that hand uncomfortably close to my leg. I immediately scooted away and prepared to leave the store. And once he'd realized that what I was doing, he got out of his stall before me after a few seconds of silence. Then I took a peek out from the gap in the stall door to see what the hell he was doing, and just like a scene from a horror movie, our eyes connected as he was barely an inch from the door and was trying to peek inside. My blood ran cold if you're wondering why I didn't immediately open the door. And because the guy out, it's because I really hate confrontation. I avoid it whenever possible, and I do my best not to draw attention to myself. I stood sideways by the door so he wouldn't be able to see me, and that's when the whispering started. I don't know what the first thing he said was, but it sounded like he was moaning. The next part was a bit more audible. He said something along the lines of wanting to see me more of my unflushed toilet paper. I was thoroughly disgusted. This guy was a complete creep. And I was alone in the bathroom with him. My heart was beating faster by the second. And I knew I had to stay there until another person came in, as there was no way I was going to confront him alone. Just then, probably a minute later, someone finally came in, and I took this as my chance to wash my hands and get the hell out of there. Thankfully, the presence of another person made the old man quit his creepy behavior. And as I was about to leave, he blocked my path for a quick second before stepping aside. The weird thing was, though I don't even think he works at the store, because he wasn't wearing any vest. My store is extremely lenient about uniform generally, but most workers at least wear a vest or something connected to the store. He just looked like a regular customer. I'm certain I heard 2 phones ding echo in that bathroom, and the phones have a signature ring to them, so it couldn't have been a coincidence. Either way, he only started creeping on me once the phone ring made it clear that I was an employee. The situation really creeped me out, and I've been totally unfocused on my work since then. I keep prowling the garden area to look out for an old man wearing a similar outfit to the creepier. And I have an incredibly hard time distinguishing faces, so I probably wouldn't even recognize him if I did see him.
So I was a security guard for this local company in my area. I was assigned to a water park with another guard who was a regular there keeping watch. He was to train me and show me around and tell me what codes open what doors. I first noticed how quick he was to enter and leave the property. He never wanted to spend more than maybe 10 minutes inside the property before he would be eager to leave. Our first night was simple. There was nothing exciting or interesting going on, so our night dragged on. After a few hours, I asked him if he'd experienced anything unusual while working there. He told me he's had some problems with people trying to enter the property without permission, but that's about it. He also told me he hated working there because of his encounters with these people. He said they creeped him out because of how sneaky they were. He didn't really want to tell me much because he was afraid that I would leave the post. That should have been a red flag for me, but I was too excited to let anything like that scare me. A few more hours later and our shift is over, so we clock out and go home for the day. The next night, my boss calls me to explain that the security guard, my partner, had resigned. I was a little upset because now I was to work a two-man post all by myself with barely any knowledge on the place. Fast forward a few weeks, I started to get the hang of the place and created my own routine with no issues at all. No break-ins, no vandalism, nothing. It's now 2 a.m. and I was outside at the front of the property completing my rounds when I heard a door slam from inside. I jumped because of how loud it was. As I started to walk back into the property, I continued to hear doors opening and closing. I could feel myself getting nervous because it was my first situation I've ever had at this place. As I walk inside and started to check the doors and complete a round to make sure that there was no one on the property, I get to this corridor where there was a set of stairs that led down to a door that was wide open. I walked down the stairs to close and lock the door because I was too scared to take a look inside. As I turned around to head back up the stairs, I noticed a man dressed in all black standing at the top of the stairs. I take a step back and realized I'm cornered if he was to try anything and that I would have nowhere to run or hide. So I politely ask him if he needed any help. He doesn't reply. I then asked him how he got into the property. He still didn't reply. He slowly turned his head and snapped his fingers. Then from the left side of the staircase, another man slowly crawled to his side like a dog on all fours. I then turned around and kicked the door open and ran inside and locked myself in the bathroom as I called my boss and told them what I witnessed. And they sent an armed security guard to my position to complete a walkthrough to make sure that I was safe. As I got the call that area was clear, I came out and told them everything from start to finish. I realized that they probably wouldn't believe me, so I just clocked out and went home for the night. The next morning, I received a call from my boss explaining that they checked the security footage from the night before, and what they told me horrified me. Every hour when I would complete my rounds inside the property, those same two men would follow me through the facility as if though they were stalking me, like as if though it was a game to them. After that, I asked for a new position because I was too horrified to work at that water park. I now know why my trainer didn't want to work there anymore.
I was in a toxic, borderline abusive friendship with a girl from the ages of 9 to 12. Here's some background information to give you a little understanding of what my life was like back in the late 20s and early 2010s. I grew up in a very tumultuous household. My parents hated each other, and my extended family, along with my immediate, were plagued by mental illness and drug addiction. So needless to say, I was an anxious child who was drawn to unstable people, and suffice it to say that they were drawn to me. I was a shy 11-year-old girl who, like many others before I, used internet as a way to vent my frustration and anger about my home life. This was the time when AOL was the main source of communication between friends. And I was no stranger to this, along with MySpace and Facebook. However, I wasn't like typical preteens of this era. Also, I thought I kept my profiles private, never accepted a follow or a friend request that I didn't know, and never shared my location on the set profiles. This is the part where I introduce Tanya. Tanya isn't her name, of course, as I don't want her real name in case she just so happens to read this thread, watches the YouTube channel, or listens to the podcast. So we'll just call her Tanya. Tanya and I met in elementary school, one of the points in my life where my family situations was quite volatile. And in the retrospect, I think she sensed this. I was vulnerable, and Tanya took advantage of my innocence. She never really displayed any signs of her true intentions in the beginning, as they never usually do. but she would do shady things now and again, manipulate me into begging my mom to stay on the computer until the wee hours of the morning so we could go on NSFW websites, ghost me when I didn't give her my favorite pen, or she'd yell at me when I couldn't perfect a guitar solo on Guitar Hero. She did some other things to me that I believe my brain blocked out due to trauma. My mom didn't like her either. Parents always have a weird intuition when it comes to friends. And I wish to God I would have listened to my mom before Tanya did what she did to me. Tanya's behavior changed for the worst when we turned 11. Tanya was openly jealous of my success in the school. Granted, she was incredibly smart herself, but she always made it a point to mock me for having great grades, and would comment that since I wasn't pretty enough, having good grades would be a nice balance. Nice, right. It took me a while to build my self-esteem. After all of the snide remarks you would make about my weight and my face, and only now, as a 22 years old, do I think that I'm beautiful and have a wonderful figure. Anyways, back to Tanya. As a result of jealousy and growing resentment towards me, she began to plot my downfall. And I make no exaggeration either. This girl literally tried to ruin my self-worth even more than she already had. It started in 6th grade. Tanya and I were remarkably close that year, and I wanted to do everything with her. We would talk all day in school. We would chat all night on AIM. And one particular evening, Tanya and I were talking about boys, being that we were hormonal preteens. Our conversation would usually turn on to who we liked in the school that day. Being that I had a horrible relationship with my father, I didn't really trust boys in from the early age, so it was rare if I developed a crush on one. I remember Tanya and I's conversation going a little something like this. She asked, "Do you know Mark, the kid in my class?" "Yeah. Why?" I replied. "I heard he likes you." She said. Surprised, I answered, "What? No way." "Totally," he told me. "You want me to talk to him and give him your username?" "Yes, of course. Oh my God, thank you, Tanya." My heart was racing. A boy liked me. Impossible. When Tanya told me that she would give Mark my username for AIM, I nearly exploded in my seat. 11-year-old me couldn't believe I was going to have my first real boyfriend. How wrong was I? Fast forward to the next night. I was getting ready for the bed when I heard the famous AOL ding sound of my iPad Touch. You know the sound I'm talking about. When I checked the notification, it was a message from MarkyBoy99. I don't know the member username, so we'll just go with something like this. I turned red. Tanya had really talked to Mark and gave my user. She was truly the best. He messaged me with the usual, "Hey," emphasis on the 3 Y's. And I responded, "Hey." I didn't want to come off as desperate, so I only used 1. Why not even a minute later? He messaged me back. We talked all night about everything. Our days, how school was, what type of silly bands we like. Typically 11-year-old stuff. And I have to admit, I was smitten right off the bat. I think it was partly because I never really had a boy like me before, and the other part being that my self-esteem was so low that I never thought a boy would be capable of liking me. Also, it could be because Mark was one of the most popular boys in the school at that time. He played football, was mouthy to the teachers, and was extremely outgoing. All the things a young girl would be attracted to. We talked for months. My puppy love grows for him more and more every time we chatted. Of course, I never spoke to him on the phone, nor did I get his phone number, because why would you do that, right? All the time I was speaking to him, Tanya will be gassing me up, telling me how proud she was of me and that I deserved a boyfriend. My suspicions of Mark only began to grow when I attempted to approach him during the school hours. Again, I had anxiety, so I would never really speak to Mark outside of AIM. When I went to talk to him, Mark looked confused, as if he had never had a conversation with me before in his life. He turned away from me on the playground and walked to be with his other friends. Ugh. Weird. This wasn't like him. He was usually so chatty with me online that I expected him to welcome me with open arms in person. My ego was bruised. My little 11-year-old mind tried to rationalize this behavior by chalking it up to him not wanting to talk to a nerd. Since he was so popular that he just preferred to keep our relationship online, I told Tanya the news, and she seemed to be genuinely heartbroken for me. She was just as angry as I was, and vowed to confront Mark later that day during the music class. I was happy. Tanya had my back, and as far as I knew, she was going to tell Mark off about him being a total jerk to me. While it worked, later that night, I got a message from Mark telling me how sorry he was for ignoring me, and then he was just going through some family things. Back in love I was. I didn't care that Mark ignored me during the school. I didn't care that he rejected my advances in person. As long as I had him to talk to online and Tanya's support, I was fine. I even told my mom about him, and she was extremely happy for me as well. Another month passed, and it was March 31st, 2011. Mark messaged me and told me that he had something very important to tell me. The next day, the anxiety began. What was it? What did he have to tell me? At that point, I considered myself Mark to be dating. So I was anxious, and he was either going to break it off with me or that he was going to make it public in school next day. I told my mom and Tanya almost on the verge of tears with how excited and nervous I was. Well, the next day, April 1, 2011, rolled around, and this is what followed. It was around 7 p.m., and I was on the Club Penguin, as I usually was until I heard a familiar ding. It was Mark. It was time for the news being waiting for all day. He wrote, "Hey babe," winky face. "Oh my god. Hey, I've been waiting for you to chat with me all night. Sorry babe, I was practice. Are you ready for the news?" I was shaking with anticipation at this point. Even writing this now, a whole swell of emotion is resurfing. "Yes, of course," I replied excitedly. It was then that Mark sent me a picture. I opened it. Only it wasn't Mark. It was Tanya. And she was holding a handwritten sign that said, "Happy April Fool's Day." At first I started laughing. And I mean, it was an ugly laugh. Of course it was a prank. Tanya had gotten me so good, right? Well, wrong. It was then when the realization hit me that I started to stop. I felt betrayed, like a loser. Tanya had been behind Mark all along, and she had been planning this big joke since October 2010. She had been so jealous that she pretended to be someone else and string along my emotions when she knew I was already in a rough place mentally. She told me that I was stupid to even think that Mark would even like me in the first place, and that I was dumb for not asking his number. Tanya had been this for 6 months. an 11-year-old girl plotted Mark, used him to make me think that a boy liked me and tricked me into believing that I had a boyfriend, all the while telling me when we hung out that she was happy for me and Mark and I were a cute couple. I told my mom, who then called her mom. My mother was livid, to say the least. She told Tanya's mom to tell her daughter never to speak to me again, and I was crushed. My best friend of 3 years had catfished me because she simply wanted to play a joke. I was loyal to her, and she toyed with my emotion because she could. Tanya had tried multiple times to guilt-trip me into being her friend again in the months that followed, leading into 7th grade. One of the more memorable and honestly messed up times being when she messaged me a few days after my birthday in August to tell me that her mother had just died in a horrible car crash. Her body was dismembered and they could only find her head and wedding ring. As anyone would be, I was in tears. Tanya's mother was nothing but lovely to me, and learning that she died in such a violent way crushed my soul. I started talking to Tanya again, asking her when her mother's funerals would be. Tanya then revealed to me seconds later, after speaking to her about the grisly details of her mother's passing, that she was just kidding and was pranking me again, and that I was stupid to believe her. She even sent a video of her laughing at me. I was disgusted. Who would even say something like that? What 12-year-old would message someone that their mother was dismembered in a car crash? She then revealed her ugly and, quite frankly, evil intentions when we were at the beginning of the 7th grade, and she became friends with a girl named Kylie. They both invited me to sit with them at their lunch table, and because I was desperate for friends, I stupidly accepted, only to be met with hordes of insults and laughter behind my back every time I wasn't looking. Tanya then messaged me one night telling me to kill myself, and that the world would be a much better place without me in it. She had Kylie to tell me to go jump off a bridge, and Tanya told me that she hated me and was never really my friend to begin with, that I deserved all the pain she put me through the year prior. I again told my mom, who then called the police. She had had enough of Tanya, and so had I. For 4 years, I have put up with Tanya's malicious behavior, and I just couldn't handle it anymore. My mom made me delete my account, and Tanya's mom told her never to contact me again, or else. My mom advised me to move the lunch tables, but I was hell-bent on not letting Tanya win. For the entirety of 7th grade, I sat at the same table as Tanya, only I spoke to my friends on the other side of the table. I never spoke to her, looked at her, or gave her any sort of attention. Kylie was scared to death of me too afterwards, as the police had gotten in contact with her family as well. It's been 10 years, and I still haven't spoken to Tanya. I'm 22 years old. I have 2 bachelor degrees, one in psychology and other in history, and I'm now working towards my master's in clinical social work. Tanya did other things to me too, that I could write a whole other story about, but I think writing this one helped give me closure on a part of my childhood that scared me for years. I thank God for my mom stepping in when she did, because I don't know where I'd be without her. As for Tanya, I don't know where is she or what she's doing, and I'd rather not. On the off chance she stumbles upon the story, I have a message for her. Your jealousy and wishes for death upon me did not win. and I truly hope that karma does not come around one day to bite you in the ass. Tanya, let's never meet again.